Everyone get out!
Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome to the patch 9.0 test server. Now, everyone's quite excited about it because it's the first of the HD models. It's basically the first flush of the or our first brush, rather. That makes more sense, with the HD client graphics. And they've put 3 models in that have been basically recreated with a much higher polygon count. Now what that means is that there is a lot more data in each model on how each model is actually put together. So the most immediate and obvious notable change, I mean obviously the textures look a bit better, but look, the gun barrel is actually round. If we compare that to a previous tank, you can see they're kind of the octagonal gun barrels that were a feature of the previous models. It's all now nice and round, and it's basically, yeah, it's looking really rather nice. The shader has also been implemented, the new shader, so even existing models actually will look a bit different. But obviously the models themselves haven't changed, it's just how they are rendered has changed, and I think it is a big improvement. I've actually seen FPS hasn't dropped at all. In fact, it is actually looking quite healthy, considering I'm only in Garage, but when I've been playing in historical battles, because that's mostly what I've been playing today since I've downloaded the test client. It actually, even with the max graphics settings, apart from motion blur, because I don't like that, it looks really good, and the FPS holds up really well. So we've got the Sherman is one of the HD models. We've got the Tiger, which is probably the one everyone's getting most excited about. It looks really very nice. I should note as well that we've been told that they're basically trying out 3 different, I guess it's the texturing styles or something, that they're trying out different things with each of the different HD models. So what they look like now in the test server, it might not be, they might settle on one particular style of doing it, so most of them will look like, say, the Tiger or the Sherman or the T-54, which is the other model that's in the game, and again it looks very, very nice. In fact, we'll even stick the weird looking stock turret on it just to see how that looks. So yeah, it's definitely a major graphical improvement, and I think that's the thing most people are going to be most excited about. But there are some other changes coming as well. I mean, look at the rifling in that. That's actually, it looks like the whole barrel's modelled inside, or at least part of it is. I mean, before, let's have a look in there. Yeah, at least part of the inside of the barrel is modelled as well. That's quite nice. Before it was just a kind of a cone that you can see there. It's anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Just a little detail I've noticed that's actually quite nice. There's some new tanks-ish in that there have been some new models introduced. Actually, before we go on to that, I'll take a quick look at the menu, and we can look at this new settings screen as well. Now, it's actually been split into 2. There's screen settings for things like screen resolution, field of view, and actually that's something I'll just show you just now. You can yeah, you can drastically change the amount of stuff that you can see on the screen. So this is the minimum setting, which is a 70-degree field of view, and we'll whip it back up to 120. Now you might want a smaller field of view for a smaller screen, for instance, but I'm probably, I'm using a 1080p monitor, so I'll be using the big field of view. I think most people will be tending towards using a bigger field of view because it looks nicer. You can also set frame rate, which is interesting, color filters there. Everything else is on this side of things, and as you can see, I've got pretty much everything turned up to maximum, and like I was saying, even in battle, the frame rate holds up really well. Now we'll see how it holds up when I'm also recording, but I have a good feeling about this, generally speaking. I think a lot of people are going to be quite pleased with how their frame rate, some people will even see their frame rate improve, or they might be able to increase their graphics settings and keep the same frame rate, so that's going to be nice. So one other thing before I move on to looking at the new tanks is, because the new shaders are in place, actually existing tanks do look a bit different, but it's actually made quite a significant difference to some camo patterns as well, because I think camo is now more influenced by the look of the base paintwork underneath it. So the colours will look different for some of the camos, and I have actually noticed this. But also the way the camo looks on a lot of tanks is because of the new shaders. It's not just the interaction of the base paint layer, but I think also the way it's now rendered. It also looks different on the actual surfaces, because they look a lot more. One of their goals was to make it look more like you're driving around big hulking, metal machines, and I think they've actually done really rather well. I think the Tiger is the one I least like the look of in terms of how the paintwork looks, or how it's rendered at the moment. And I think the Sherman's probably my favourite, but the T-54 looks pretty good as well. But yeah, although I've noticed one peculiar bug. This is not really anything to do with anything, but the new Stug, they haven't put the camo right on that at all. That just looks a bit wonky. So, talking of the new Stug, yes, let's look at the new tanks. It's the Tier 4 Stug, we'll start with that. It's actually not that different from the Hetzer in some ways, but in other ways it's going to have... I think it's different enough to be maybe worth playing. Now, it's got... it looks a lot like the Stug because it's pretty much the same basic shape. Obviously there's some differences in the armor layout. The actual armor is not that great. It's 50, okay. The Hetzer's only got 10 more than that, but it doesn't have any of the sloping of the Hetzer. It's got quite a flat front there, so you're not going to be able to rely on the armor on this thing, but it's a low tier tank destroyer, so compare it to like the Su-85B, which is just made of paper. It's going to rely more on stealth. It doesn't have a particularly good view range. It's actually got the same view range as the Stug. It gets the same engine as the Stug, and it actually has nearly as good a traverse speed, which is actually quite nice. It's got a better traverse speed than the Hetzer, 40 degrees a second, so that's pretty good. Gun choices are very similar to the Stug. In fact, the only difference is that this gets the 75mm derp, as it's called, as its stock gun. It's a pretty terrible gun. You're not going to want to use that. One difference I have noticed, which is interesting, look there, the Hetzer and the Stug both using the L48. This has got the gun muzzle, and it's actually, I think, reflected in the fact that 0.36 accuracy, 0.37 accuracy. Now, exactly the same DPM otherwise, but this is marginally more accurate, which is maybe going to make it a slightly more attractive gun. Whereas if we compare the derp guns, which both have the muzzle, this has got 0.55 versus 0.53, so the Hetzer is still going to be king of the derps. You can use the derp on the Stug, but I think it's maybe going to be marginally more attractive to use this thing. But I don't know, your mileage may vary. People might still just play it with the derp because it's the derp, and even though you won't hit stuff as often with the Hetzer, it might still be quite effective. But I think actually, given that you're probably going to want to be more at a distance because your armor is going to be less effective, I think that's probably still the better choice. Now, the other new tanks we got, which again not especially new in terms of that we already have different models of those tanks in games, but we've got two new Panzer IVs. So we've got at Tier 3, we've got this thing, which is the Panzer IV out of A, and it's got basically paper armor. The only even a little bit decent armor is the 30 frontal armor on the turret, but even then it's got a great big honking commander's hatch. Not that you're going to have to aim for the commander's hatch, because 14 hull armor, that's very bad. This thing is going to rely on its speed, and it looks like it might have a fairly decent horsepower to ton ratio. It's got a decent traverse speed limit is pretty decent. You can see there the horsepower per ton is actually 19.2, nearly 19.3, so this thing is going to rely on its mobility to get around, and for a Tier 3, okay. A lot of Tier 3s don't have a lot of armor. I think this might actually be interesting to try out. The only fly in the ointment with the mobility is, even though it's got decent mobility and actually okay view range for a Tier 3, the upgraded gun is actually that 75mm derp. It's pretty terrible. The stock gun, the 5cm, actually beats it on all counts except for damage, so you're probably going to want to use the stock gun with this thing if you do happen to play it. Otherwise it looks like it might be okay. I've not actually been able to try any of these in battle because everyone's doing historical battles, so It's like, you click battle, random battle, and you just sit there for 5 minutes. I'll maybe try a training room later and actually look at some of these in a bit more detail. Just see how they handle, and it's not exactly under battle conditions, but it's better than nothing. This is the tier 4, the Hours of D, which gets the L43 gun, which is, that's okay, 103 pen, 110 damage. That's pretty good for a tier 4 medium. That's not that far behind. It's not Matilda levels of penetration, but we're not that far behind, and it's actually definitely going to be a very usable one. It's got actually, it's a heavier tank, because this one's actually only 18 tons. We've got an extra. We've jumped up to 30 frontal armor. It's still nothing special, but we've now got a bit of sloping. Horsepower per ton ratio is actually better now, 21.27. So this thing's going to be fairly mobile. You've actually got the top engine of the Maybach 120, which is what you get at the tier 5 as well. So it's going to have a pretty good mobility. This is actually maybe going to give the Panzer III a run for its money. We'll see. And combined with that gun, I think this could actually be a really nice tier 4 medium. This is going to be it's going to be a proper flanking machine, and it's going to have enough penetration to deal with. I think even in tier 6 battles, obviously it's going to change how you play it depending on the tiers, but tier 4 battles I think you could do really nicely in this. In tier 6 battles you're going to have to rely more on flanking and being a bit more cautious, but slightly better view range, turret traverse is good, 44 degrees, hull traverse is pretty good, 40 is really nice, we're not going to complain about that. And all in all, I think that actually might be a really nice, fun machine to play. And then we have model changes for, the tier 5. It's not changing characteristics at all, but we're back down to 17.5 HPT. So for that, so this looks like overall it's going to be the most fun because it's going to have the most mobility. The armor's not really anything, but when you've got pretty good mobility and a very good acceleration, then it's not like it's especially fast, but I think it's going to be fast enough. So that's the new models. I've looked at the new settings. There's a host of other changes coming with 9 as well. Historical battle's obviously the big one, but there's going to be a plethora of other smaller changes as well. There's things like a couple of model changes. I think there's a couple of other minor things besides. But I will put in a link to, I think there's a For the Record post that details what we know so far about 9.0, and I'll put a link into that below. So my plan is, once I put this video up, I will, once I've recorded this video, I'm actually going to record a separate video looking specifically at historical battles, rather than lump it all into one. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll have, I've had some fun ones so far, hopefully I'll get some good footage out of that. So if you thought this overview was informative, interesting, you can hit the like button, you can leave a comment below, you can subscribe to my channel, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.